Hello, everyone. Happy Friday, and welcome to another edition of Challenger Network News. Really excited to have Leo Taylor, co-founder and CEO of Bug, Better Universal Grub, on the show today. How you doing, Leo?
Not bad. Thanks, Brandon. Thanks for having me on. And thanks everybody for tuning in.
Cool. So what are we going to talk about today? So you've all heard of meal kits, but have you heard of Bug meal kits? That's right, meal kits with insects for ingredients. Challenging the market, challenging perceptions, trying to see if we can actually shift behaviors to include bugs in our diets. That's what we're going to be covering today. And Leo is trying to do exactly that with his company, Bug, Better Universal Grub. I love the name. I'd love to know, maybe first question, how did you come up with the name?
It was very much post-rationalization. So we started with Bug and sort of what words could fit into that, Better Universal Grub, and thought sort of, the play with the word grub was fun as well.
Cool. Well, we love to have challengers on this show. This is what the show is all about, is challenging the status quo. And you're certainly doing that, Leo. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the company? Tell us a little bit about the story. How did this idea come about to bring insects to meal kits and bring them to a market where that is certainly not the cultural norm? I'd be really curious to know what inspired you, and also importantly, why you think this is so important for all of us.
Absolutely. So like Brandon says, we're trying to get people to cook delicious insect meals at home, and for us, this is really about making insects accessible for people. And teaching them to cook with an ingredient that's otherwise delicious, versatile, and really just like any other ingredient. It's purely just a cultural aversion that we have to them. But how did I get into this? So I actually grew up all over South and East Asia. I'm half Thai, my mum's Thai, my dad's English. And I grew up in countries that ate insects, so Thailand, China for a little bit. I was in Bangladesh, in India, and in Sri Lanka. As well as some countries in Africa, and so I was exposed to insect eating from a young age, but it wasn't really until 2013 when the UN came out with a report talking about how insects can solve some of our big food sustainability, food scarcity issues that I became interested from an environmental perspective. And this was about 2013. Before I went off to university, I actually went off and studied architecture. Quickly decided it wasn't the career for me, and so moved over into food branding for a few years. And as I say, I had this interest in edible insects. I was fascinated by the idea that something that I grew up with could actually solve these huge problems. And it became apparent that no one was doing anything meaningful, in this space. And really, I just wanted to cook with insects. So at the time, Aaron, my co-founder, was actually cooking with burgers and sausages made with insects and selling them to his local community. So, and posting them online, and that's actually how I met Aaron for the first time. Was just through Instagram, and we started chatting. Before we knew it, we were shooting insect recipe videos just out of our garage on weekends and evenings for fun. So for the best part of the year, as a hobby, it was something that we were doing, really just because we were interested in it. And somewhat to our surprise, people started to watch these videos, and we started getting questions around, could we sell people insects? Could we do certain kinds of recipes? And that's when we thought, let's do something more serious around this. Let's put a product out there. And so I went full time in January last year. We launched our first product, our MVP, in April, called the Bug Box. So this is more like a Simply Cook style kit where you get the marinades, paste, spices with the insects, and recipe cards. So we sort of prescribe the recipe to people. There are a few issues with that, and we went through a few iterations last year. And really where we are now is, right at the end of a funding round. We actually closed £400,000 on Crowdcube yesterday, so it's quite an exciting time for us.
Yeah, I saw that. That's a big accomplishment. Congratulations on that.
Thanks very much. Yeah, and really, the rest of the year is sort of ramping up to launch. We're looking to get these kits out, in about autumn time.
Amazing, amazing. And did you have to run through any kind of regulatory hurdles to be able to actually sell and distribute bugs in this country?
Great question, and Brexit certainly hasn't helped. And actually, there's a lot of nuance to this answer, but we were really starting, obviously, in the EU. The EU had an application process that insects sort of had to go through, sort of a novel food application process. And we were sort of in the midst of that when we left the EU. So we actually left the EU whilst these applications were having a positive, either positive or negative decision. Since we've left this year, approvals have been coming out from the EU, for the mealworm, and they're getting to the crickets and some of the others. But really, what's happened is we will now have to make the exact same applications to the UK-based Food Standards Agency. So there are absolutely some hoops we need to jump through, and the Food Standards Agency are still sort of figuring out what exactly is going on. But we're working with sort of effectively the acting industry body for edible insects in the UK, as well as other companies to get those applications submitted.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And what you mentioned, mealworms and crickets, are those kind of the two main ingredients for the moment, or are there other key ingredients you're using?
So we'll also be selling a buffalo worm powder. So that they look very similar to a mealworm, except they're smaller. So they're also called the lesser mealworm, and they're ground down in our kits into a powder. So you're not actually seeing them. We won't be selling, the whole buffalo worms. And so we'll have that as a powder alongside the cricket powders as well. So crickets ground down.
Got it. And can you tell us just a little bit about the nutritional value at a high level? Does this compare to protein? Is it more like a vegetarian diet, or what does it kind of fall?
Insects are really unbelievably good for you. Crickets, for example, are up to 70% protein. That's 3 times the amount in beef. You've got more iron than spinach, more calcium than milk, more potassium than bananas, more B12 than red meat, more fiber than brown rice. The list keeps going. So they're an incredibly nutritious superfood.
Right.
I mean, on the other side, on the sustainability side, you can rear this stuff off the stuff that we just don't eat, the stuff that we throw away. So food or waste that would have otherwise gone to landfill, you can recapture that and turn it into this extremely nutritious and actually very tasty food.
Yeah, and I mean, food production set to it needs to double by 2050 for us to be able to feed ourselves. So it's a real problem that this is one way to address that problem. But okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. And I would love to hear from anyone who's watching the show. Just give us a comment, and we'll ask your question on. And we'd love to hear if you'd eat a bug. But how are you going to get people to change these patterns of behavior, these perceptions, or are you not going for that? Are you going for something else?
Well, that's absolutely the goal, and that's the big challenge here is exactly as you say. How do we change people's perceptions around insects as food? And I mean, the question is actually potentially a bit broader than that. How do you introduce something new to a market that is unconventional? And it always starts, it always starts with the early adopters. It always starts with the people who are going to, who are the guys who are going to adopt it and normalize it and make it a part of their lifestyle. Because they're really the ones who are going to, broadcast this and establish a community and go and tell other people. the amount of power that we have as a brand is actually insignificant compared to friends and family telling their friends and family. So that's what we're trying to do is really be laser focused on who are the early adopters, what do they need to incorporate insects into their diet, because they're absolutely out there. And this is sort of what we were doing last year in our testing, trying to figure this out. What are the barriers to getting people cooking insects and making it a part of their lifestyle? And it turns out, these early adopters just aren't scared of eating insects. We had an average squeamish rating of 2 out of 10. These guys just weren't scared. And actually what they wanted to experience the insect in their food. They wanted to taste it almost like you would a prawn. Right. And they just wanted to cook with it. So really what we're doing with these meal kits is allowing them to do that, allowing them, to use this versatile ingredient, but also teaching them, how to use an ingredient that they've never, cooked with before. And the question is, how do we go from that to take it mainstream? Really, for us, it's a process of normalizing it, as I say, for this early segment, but then hitting, the adjacent segment. So adjacent segments with different product ranges. So incrementally releasing products that do appeal more to the mainstream. We're looking at, further down the line, pre-made foods, maybe like burgers and sausages, even ready meals, and also looking at, partnering with food service. So also expanding our channels to fit sort of more mainstream audiences. Right. But it's really important, I think, for us before we do that we have, a community of people, of customers who, by the time we launch into a supermarket, are going in and looking for our product. Because it's actually been the downfall of many edible insect companies launching into mainstream channels too soon. That no one's going in to Tesco's looking for crickets. And not really understanding why you'd want to eat insects. So for us, starting with the direct to consumer channels and starting with products that probably won't be the products that go mainstream, but do establish a community and do target the early adopters is critical for us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In fact, you and I were talking just before the show that, what's the difference between trying an insect in your meal versus all the other things we've tried in our lives? How many times when we were younger, there were things we just wouldn't eat, but as we were introduced to them, we grew to realize that they were tasty, and in fact, even grew to love them. I mean, there are countless things that I certainly can say in my own life that I've like, I would never eat that, but here I am, and I eat it. I eat it now. So what's really the difference? It does feel like there's a path there. And then you mentioned direct to consumer, which is, I think, important and from a channel perspective. And then I assume from a marketing standpoint, will influencers play a big role in kind of how you're going to create that community?
A huge role, and we're certainly budgeting for it in our sort of marketing plan. I mean, a big part of this is, leveraging people with cultural influence. This is a cultural thing. It's a cultural problem, you might say, a cultural difference. Yeah. And how do you change people's culture and idea of what's cool? If you can make insect eating cool, and you get cool people doing it, then you're getting closer to that, to the sense that it's normal.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm so fascinated by this topic. I've been looking forward to this chat all week. And again, if anyone's watching on the show, drop us a question or drop us a line, and we'd love to address what your questions are. Well, let's talk a little bit about. I mean, it's an incredible challenge, but you can kind of understand, like you said, there's lots of examples where people have changed the culture. It's just a pattern. Culture is a pattern of behavior. And that pattern can be changed. I think, the novelty, something's being cool, also something becoming normalized or safe, or, it's healthy. It's clean, it's sustainable. Like, there's a lot of good things that you mentioned. I didn't realize like how nutritious they were. But you can kind of see the path. But wow, what a test you're gonna have. Have others tried this before? You mentioned some have maybe tried to go too mainstream too fast. Have you learned from some of those lessons?
Uh, well, we think so, and all of this is sort of us, post-rationalizing and coming up with our own theories. But everyone's got their own story. Um, but what we see time and time again is that companies come out with snacks. They sort of, I think they're asking the question of how do we show people that insects aren't that disgusting, um, and how do we make it palatable to most people? But that is completely, we think, the wrong way to approach this, because you end up with something that appeals to an average Joe, but actually doesn't even appeal to the average Joe. You end up with a snack. You end up trying to hide insects, and the problem is, that this isn't the kind of thing that the early adopters want. So you're not getting a repeat purchase. So you get a novelty buy, but no one comes back a second time because it's not clear, other than being able to say I tried a cricket. That's the value you're delivering, is that, oh, I ate an insect snack. But it, compared to other snacks on the market, or compared to other energy bars or whatever else it is, it's not clear why you'd be going for one over the other. I mean, the other point there is that you're limiting what's otherwise, as I say, a delicious, versatile ingredient to a highly differentiated product. And as I say, we found early adopters just want to cook. They want the versatility. They want to be able to integrate insects into their meals. And when you're an energy bar, you can only eat it as an energy bar. So it's a very highly differentiated product. You're not necessarily solving the problem because you're not getting meat off the table. If you're an energy bar, you're not competing against a steak, or a cracker, you're not competing against a steak. So we felt that it was disingenuous to the problem, but also insects as an ingredient. You're taking something like a prawn and you're sticking it in a. I mean, we often say it's showing people how delicious prawns are by selling prawn crackers.
Right.
You're missing out on all of that, amazing things that you can do with prawns.
That makes total sense. So, if you were able to achieve this, and others who are maybe doing something similar in other markets, do you see a change in how kind of our food makeup will be in the future? We talked about that big problem lingering of 2050 having to double our food production.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see a path where the future food will change, and how that will change over time? I'd be interested to know if you see that future, or if you've seen any other indicators in maybe other markets or other categories where you think that could change.
Well, I'd say we have to change. I mean, we certainly don't have an option. We think the most fundamental problem we need to solve is our relationship with our planet. And that beats getting to Mars, or dollar razor blades, or or any other startup that isn't going after this problem. And food is a huge part of this. Several studies have livestock production is over 50% of global greenhouse gas emissions. We need to solve the food problem. And for us, insects make up a part of that solution. I don't think there is a single be all and end all solution, and I think that's because people want variety in their diets. Not everybody wants to eat crickets every day. Not everybody wants to eat a Beyond Burger every day. So we see ourselves as part of an array of sustainable solutions, sustainable meals that people can eat. And really, for us, that is the vision: is to be able to pick up an insect meal, or have insects available wherever meat is an option.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We did just get a question, and why don't we ask from Ed? Interested to hear about your country strategy, and how does the existing bug eating culture in the countries you're targeting influence that? Ed remembers trips to Southeast Asia where bug eating is very common practice, which you mentioned in your intro.
Yeah. So these countries that already eat insects aren't the issue as much. What we're trying to do is expand the demand, and expand the number of people, the proportion of the planet that do eat insects, and really it's the West that's the frontier. It's the West. We need to be eating less meat in the West. we're absolutely, going after, initially the UK. I think if things go well, expanding into adjacent, EU markets, but obviously, that's several years down the line. And the States, I think, is another, huge potential.
Sure, absolutely. Well, Leo, it's fascinating. I applaud you for absolutely going against the grain and trying to really do something that could really have a big impact in on our planet and behaviors. So well done so far. Congratulations on your fundraise. And I will make a commitment on this show on live television that I will give it a try. So we'll have to talk offline how I can do that. But I'm committed to doing it.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, Leo, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. And that's all the time we have for this week. But I look forward to hearing more comments from you as we go on. We'll be sure to watch it and monitor and answer any other questions that you have. And until next week on another episode of Challenger Network News, I wish everyone a great weekend. Thanks again, Leo.
Cheers. Bye.